Welcome back to UFlix Recap. Today's video is about a 2001 American sci-fi thriller film called Donnie Darko. The movie is set in October 1988. The film follows Donnie Darko, an emotionally unstable adolescent who sleepwalks his way out of a weird disaster. He gets visions of a strange man dressed as a rabbit who tells him the world will end a little over 28 days. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. On October 2nd, 1988, a teenager called Donnie awakens in the middle of the road after sleepwalking the night before. He's initially perplexed by what has occurred to him before smiling. Then he rides his bicycle back to his house in the little town in Virginia where his family goes about their daily lives despite his absence throughout the night. That evening, Donnie had supper with his family, including his parents, Eddie and Rose, and his sisters, Elizabeth and Samantha. Rose then suggests that Elizabeth attend Harvard the following fall. Donnie tells an inappropriate joke to his younger sister, which sparks an altercation between him and Elizabeth. Later that night, Rose confronts her son about his disappearance in the middle of the night. Donnie feels defensive and recommends that she instead take his meds. Rose departs and speaks with Eddie about his actions. Eddie, unable to sleep, retires to the living room to watch television. A weird voice awakens Donnie upstairs, causing him to sleepwalk out of his bedroom. Donnie walks by his father, who's sleeping in the living room. Donnie walks outdoors and through the dark streets, eventually arriving at a golf field and smiling at the person before him. As it turns out, there's a weird person dressed in a frightening rabbit suit. The rabbit informs him that the world will end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds. Elizabeth had just arrived home when something loud and heavy crashed into the house, alarming everyone. Donnie wakes up on the golf course the next day with a marker in his hand and numbers scribbled on his arm. As he walks home, he notices cops and onlookers all around him. In exchange for a non-disclosure agreement, the FAA supplies them with lodgings and funds for repairs after a jet engine crashed on his bedroom. Donnie discovers that the FAA has not determined the origin of the jet engine. Samantha inquires about the jet engine in their hotel room, but her older siblings reject her inquiries in the other room. Their parents recall an old high school buddy who died on the way to their prom as a result of a psychotic episode. Eddie is concerned that Donnie will follow in Eddie's footsteps. The following day, Donnie and Samantha meet up with their classmates. While Donnie's pals hand him the cigarette, the girls anxiously inquire about the jet engine event. Ronald begins to insult Sharita, but Donnie protects her. Donnie is in an English class at school where they're discussing Graham Greene's novel, The Destructors. Karen Pomeroy, his instructor, inquired about his thoughts on the book's chapter concerning destruction. He implies that because destruction is a sort of creativity, the novel's characters may wish to see the world ripped apart in order to alter things. The door opens and all eyes are drawn to Gretchen Ross, the new girl. Gretchen accepts Miss Pomeroy's challenge to sit next to the boy she deems most beautiful, and she selects Donnie. Eddie complains after school about having to rebuild their house and how the FAA refuses to provide him anything about what happened. Eddie gets distracted by the chat and almost strikes an elderly woman standing in the center of the road. Donnie approaches the woman for assistance, and she whispers something in his ear. Donnie recalls meeting the individual in the rabbit outfit, Frank, at Dr. Thurman's office. Donnie describes how Frank informed him that the world is coming to an end, but he refuses to accept it. Donnie's class views a film about overcoming anxieties, hosted by Jim Cunningham the next day. Donnie hears Frank's voice again, this time advising him to pay close attention to the footage. Donnie dreams of the school in the ocean when he sleeps. Donnie taunts Samantha the next day about a short fiction she penned while waiting for the bus. Sean informs them that their bus is running 20 minutes late. Two girls from their school run up to them, informing them that the school has been closed owing to water in the building. The principal is standing in the flooded building as water is flowing from a broken water pipe outside. They discover an expert reading from the school statue's head, and a note is placed at the statue's foot saying, "They forced me to do it," while walking back to school. Donnie notices Gretchen being encircled by Seth and Ricky, the school bullies. He learns that Gretchen moved with her mother to avoid her stepfather after he stabbed her mother when they were working together. Donnie reveals that he was arrested for burning down an abandoned house, and Ben adds that he has gotten his life in order since the incident before they part ways. Donnie invited Gretchen out and she agreed at his next therapy appointment with Dr. Thurman. Dr. Thurman changes the subject to school and his family, but Donnie continues talking about girls and fantasizing about the actress Christina Applegate. Dr. Thurman ends the session when she sees Donnie unzipping his pants. Back in school, police ordered the students to write "They made me do it" on the board to match their handwriting with the vandalism. Seth accuses Donnie of spreading rumors that he flooded the school, then Seth puts a knife to Donnie's throat, accusing him of doing the deed instead. Later that day, Donnie and his friends hang out in the field shooting at bottles as they argue. However, the conversation is interrupted when the same old woman stops in the middle of the road again, alarming a driver. She's often seen standing in the middle of the road to check her empty mailbox that never receives any mail. That evening, the school hosts an emergency PTA meeting to determine who flooded and vandalized the school. The gym teacher, Mrs. Farmer, links the act of vandalism to the story. The destructors, which means Mrs. Pomeroy, teaches in her English class. Mrs. Farmer claims that the novel inspired the act and shouldn't be taught in their school. On the other hand, Donnie finds Frank in his bathroom, who assures him that no one will find out what he did. Donnie faces the strange creature, but a force seemingly blocks him from Frank. He asks why Frank led him to flood the school, to which Frank explains that they're in grave danger. Frank asks if Donnie believes in time travel. Samantha suddenly walks into the bathroom and Frank has disappeared. On Poetry Day, Mrs. Farmer implements attitude lessons, but Donnie argues against the concept that she's teaching, insisting that life and human emotions cannot be lumped into categories. Due to this argument, Donnie's parents are called into the principal's office. Despite Mrs. Farmer's hysterics, Rose and Eddie are not bothered by Donnie's behavior. Mrs. Farmer lectures Rose on raising her son, shocking her. Donnie learns time travel theories from his science teacher. He gives Donnie a book titled The Philosophy of Time Travel, written by a former nun who suddenly turned to science. Donnie recognizes the author's name, Roberta Sparrow, who also happens to be the old crazy woman, sharing his therapy and hypnosis. Donnie admits that he has stopped wondering about God, but confesses that he doesn't want to be alone. That evening, Donnie sees a bubble emerging, showing their next steps. He looks down and sees a bubble on his chest, directing him to go somewhere. Donnie follows the bubble to his parents' room, where he finds a gun in the closet. Meanwhile, after pondering on Donnie's behavior, Rose and Eddie visit Dr. Thurman to discuss about Donnie. Dr. Thurman suggests that Donnie's afraid of the world, and thus he's detached himself from reality. Donnie continuously jams a knife onto his bathroom mirror, imagining Frank. In the reflection days, later, Jim Cunningham hosts a school assembly that Mrs. Farmer arranged. Jim presents a story, and Donnie finds his answers to student questions absurd and starts criticizing Jim. After school, Donnie rants about Jim's hypocrisy aggression. He hands her Roberta's book and explains that he sees bizarre things tied to the book. Hoping for answers, the two visit Roberta's home, but no one responds. Finally, while checking her mailbox, they spot Roberta watching them on the terrace. In his mind, Donnie hears Frank telling him to send Roberta a letter. He subsequently discovers Cunningham's wallet and address, and Frank advises setting fire to his house. There, firefighters locate a cache of child pornography. Cunningham is arrested, and Kitty, who wants to testify in his defense, urges Rose to accompany their girls' dancing ensemble to Los Angeles. Donnie and Elizabeth have a Halloween costume party to commemorate Elizabeth's admittance to Harvard, while Rose is in Los Angeles and Eddie is away on business. Gretchen arrives at the party unhappy since her mother has gone missing, and she and Donnie have their first kiss. Donnie accompanies Gretchen and two other pals to seek Sparrow when he learns Frank's foretold end of the world is barely hours away. They instead uncover two high school bullies, Seth and Ricky, who were attempting to loot Sparrow's home. Donnie, Seth, and Ricky brawl in the road in front of her house just as Sparrow is about to get home. An incoming automobile swerves to avoid Sparrow and hits and kills Gretchen. The driver is revealed to be Elizabeth's lover, Frank Anderson, who's dressed in the same rabbit outfit as Donnie in his visions. Donnie shoots Frank in the eye with his father's revolver before returning home with Gretchen's body. Donnie arrives home as a cyclone develops around his house. He steals one of his parents' cars, packs Gretchen's body inside, and drives to a neighboring bridge with a view of town. There, he witnesses as the jet taking Rose and the dancing company home from Los Angeles becomes entangled in the vortex's aftermath, violently ripping off one of its engines and sending it back in time. The past 28 days' events come to a close. Donnie awakens in his bedroom, notices the date is October 2nd, and chuckles as the jet engine crashes into his room, crushing him. Those whose lives Donnie might have impacted awaken from disturbing nightmares across town. The next morning, Gretchen passes past the Darko house and hears about Donnie's death. Gretchen and Rose exchange glances and waves as though they've met before but can't recall where. And that is all about this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with such interesting movie recap videos here.